Hey y'all, it's Rebecca Folks, and I want to talk to y'all a little bit today about sharing your story. How many of y'all have encountered people that come to you and say, "Oh no, I could never do that. I'm not a salesperson. I could never sell anything, and that would never be a strength of mine." And what do you want to say? We don't sell, we share. And so that's so true. We share. And so being a good storyteller, being able to share your story is an integral part of our businesses and something that we can always be better at. And I know that I am always trying to be better at this and learning different ways. And so it was fun for me to kind of look into this and dig in a little bit more and think of some more ways that we can be sharing our stories. We want to learn to tell our stories because that is what connects us with people, right? And we all have a story to tell. So while often we hear people not wanting to post on social media or tell their stories because they're thinking that they're falling somewhere on that continuum of, I don't have a story, or I'm kind of boring, or I don't have anything worth telling, all the way to I wouldn't want to share that because I would feel arrogant or I would feel too showy or something like that. And so the truth is, none of those are true. You absolutely have a story. Everyone has a story. And the way that we share our stories, and when we figure out how to do that in a really great, engaging way, this is big. And that is going to connect you with that emotional, in the emotional connection with people, because people then are able to see themselves in your stories and relate to you and go, huh, I've felt that way too, or I've struggled with something similar to that. I know I had a girl join my team years ago who was like what I thought the healthiest person ever. She was super crunchy in all the ways, and she had this like closet Mountain Dew addiction. And when one time I posted something about helping people get off of soft drinks, she joined our team and became an emerald, all because she had this like secret Mountain Dew addiction. And so that brings me to one of my first points, which is you want to have lots of stories in your arsenal of different stories that you can tell. And business stories and product stories, we may have this big why, but being able to tell the little stories too, that can connect with people, and you never know who you're going to relate to and who could be struggling with something that's just similar. And so don't be reluctant to tell your story, because it's so important. One cool thing about stories is science shows that when you're listening to a story, your brain starts to release a hormone called oxytocin, and it engages you. You remember more. It emotionally connects you to the person telling the story, and stories are powerful. One of my favorite teachers and storytellers is John Maxwell. I love his books. I love his earlier this year I did his certification, his course where you get trained to be a trainer, speaker, and mentor and coach to people. And one thing, on one of the days, they did a whole day just on being a better speaker. And I thought it was really, really cool when they showed this big, this kind of graph where there were different symbols, that it was basically an outline of an entire keynote speech of his from somewhere where he'd spoken, and they broke it down with symbols. And so there would be a star when there was a teaching point, or a triangle when it was a high energy moment, or another symbol when it was for a personal story. And y'all, it was like, if it was a circle, it was circle, 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 all circles, because he teaches and trains with stories. And so you're able to, number one, we've all been in those, lectures or whatever, when people are just giving you lots of information. But what happens when someone tells a story? You kind of sit up in your seat and you remember more and you engage more, because people like to hear stories. And so being a story is so important. Kendra Hall is a professional storyteller, and we've had her at convention. She's come or she's done a video for Super Saturday. She's come in so many times for jewel training when people get to be jewels and they come in for the jewel training, and does this workshop on storytelling. And so I remember she always says, every story needs a beginning and a middle and an end. And for Kendra, that equates to normal, explosion, new normal. And so whenever we would do these workshops, you'd and you start talking about your whys and different stories that you could tell in your business, you'd break it down in that normal, explosion, new normal. And so what was your life, and then that something big changed, and now where are you now? And I love that way of thinking about that. And so when you're writing down your stories and you're thinking about your whys, think about that in that graph. I love that she always wants you to remind us, you want to be very clear, very concise, but include details, because the details make the story. And so I think that's huge. And I heard one lady telling your story one time, and she said there's a big difference between telling a story and tell me a story and show me a story. And so if you're telling a story, it might say something like, before Plexus, I was just tired all the time. I was frustrated. I was just kind of thinking, maybe I'm just getting older, but I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And finally I thought, I'm going to try something new. I'm over this. But if you're showing a story, you're going to paint a picture for someone. And so you might say, I woke up every single morning waiting for nap time. And I can remember so many days my kids coming to the side of my bed and saying, Mommy, play with me. But I was too tired. And so I just handed them the iPad, and I was suffering from mom guilt all the time. And every afternoon, my husband would come home and say, what'd you do today? And I didn't really have anything to say because I couldn't get out of bed. And so finally, I thought, this cannot be my life. And now everything's changed. Can you see how it's really the same story, but instead of just telling the story, you're showing what your life looked like? So what are those details that you can add in to show a story? Part of that is vulnerability. And my favorite definition of vulnerability is being willing to be seen, a willingness to be seen. And I love that because it's letting people kind of peek behind your curtain, and being willing to say, yeah, I've got yucky parts of my life and my story, but I'm willing to show you some of mine to help you. And so I love that when you're writing it down, just ask yourself, how can I dig deeper? You don't have to get all the nitty gritty out there, but how can you paint a picture that's going to really show people what those explosions and those new normals that Plexus has given you? People love stories, y'all, and every story does not have to be necessarily a Plexus plug at the end. Create that curiosity and be willing to tell your stories, and be thinking about, okay, where am I going to run into people? Where do I see people? And what stories can I tell? Because you want to make this arsenal, right? And you're going to write them down, and you're going to practice them, because that way, when you're practicing these stories, it's going to be so much easier. You're going to be so much more confident in sharing them because you've got them. You've practiced them. You've set them out. Don't just write them down. You want to say them out loud. See your face. What expressions do you make? And the more that you it's just going to be more natural for you. I would say that brevity is key. You want those to, how can you wrap this up in 60 seconds or less, to be able to tell a story, to be able to just share a little piece of your life that says, this is what life was like before and what it's like now. And so start writing those down, your business stories, your product stories, and then share them with a friend, and be thinking of places where you can share your stories and start sharing them today. I know you're going to be a great storyteller. Thanks, y'all.